Today we're reviewing Quinacridone Rose by Daniel Smith. What's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another episode of The Paint Show. Before we begin, I just wanted to mention the episodes are a little more spaced out in the last few weeks just because I have a lot of ideas and a lot of backlog of videos I already recorded, but we will change the frequency. So in the future I may increase it and you'll see every week an episode, or maybe even more than once a week, just because these are easier videos actually for me to approach doing and making. It's much more spontaneous than the other videos, but right now there's just a lot of stuff I want to do, so this is why the spacing out. So let's get started. Today we're reviewing Quinacridone Rose by Daniel Smith. I'm really surprised, just like the Pyrrol Scarlet, that it took me so long to get to this paint, because I've been relying on it heavily in the past, I don't know, 2 or 3 years I've been using, and I had another tube and I restocked, and the small one, actually the first one I've got left, and it has quite a lot of paint in it still. And this is a paint that is super useful. It's kind of like in the family of the alizarins and the Madder Lake and all of those paints that are always recommended to try out as a kind of cool red. So this one was incredibly useful for me so far. Many of the portraits that you see me do have that in it. Many of the landscapes and cityscapes you see me work on have this one in it, so it's just a core paint for me, and I'm happy to finally review it. So I think the first thing we're gonna do is change the angle. I'm gonna give you a better look at the tube, and then we're gonna move on to the paint info and to the demo. So let's do that. So let's take a closer look at the tube before we move on. I just love Daniel Smith's design. As I mentioned, this is a small 5ml tube. You can barely see this here. One of the ones I got in the Daniel Smith's Essentials set, which looks just like that. I actually have a larger tube of this particular paint as well, but this one somehow was left in my drawer and I haven't really seen it. And so I still have quite a lot of paint here, and it's fun. It's like a fun memento or something, but I'm going to use it actually right now. I'm going to show you. So I just love the way these tubes look. The cap is a bit sometimes it's a bit hard to open, but now you can see. Let me show you what this looks like really up close in the tube. Okay, and you can see some of that is spilling out a bit. What I'm going to do now is put it in the palette. I'm going to show you some of the paint information and we'll move on. So there are a few reasons why I love this paint, and I think it's a really good one that many people should try just because it's so useful. So Quinacridone Rose by Daniel Smith, Pigment PV19, very common pigment for these kinds of reds, a series 2, so it's a little pricier, but when you get it in a set it's not. So I don't know, I think it's worth it in any case just because it's so useful. Lightfastness 1, that's great, that's excellent. It is transparent, it is medium staining, it is non-granulating. So if you like transparent, non-granulating colors, if you want to be able to lift some of that, this actually makes this paint perfect for painting, I think, flowers, floral paintings, especially if you're using hot pressed paper, which is smooth, and you want to lift a lot. Then this one can really help you. I saw this guy, I think his name is Fabio Cambranelli. I hope I get that right. Fabio Cambranelli, and he does a lot of lifting, and his technique is beautiful. And so he puts in a first wash with wet and wet, and then he lifts out the petals. And it's just amazing to see. So this could be very well used for that. So now let's take a look at what this actually looks like. So I just wanted to show you what this looks like on the palette in the well. I know a lot of you hate when I paint with my wells empty, so I filled it up for you. I just paint so much that I constantly run out of it and I have to refill, so that's what happens. Sorry about that. Sorry for painting so much. So in any case, I'm going to start just with a flat wash here, and we're going to see what the results like. Wetting it a bit. This is a very pure paint in its pure form. I forgot to mention that Quinacridone PV19 is actually Quinacridone Rose. Okay, that's the actual pigment. So the name here that Daniel Smith chose to take is the right one. In this case, they like to have some creative names with their paints. The paper I'm using is a Winsor Newton Cotman paper, very cheap and not that good. It will affect slightly the result, but the paint is gonna look the same, so don't worry about that. It will probably affect a bit how the paint disperses or something like that, but it's not that terrible. The brush I'm using is a silver black velvet size 8, just if you're curious. And next up, I'm gonna do some wet in wet, so I'm just thoroughly cleaning the brush, putting in this, pre-wetting the surface. This is where you will see difference due to the type of paper, I suppose, but it's not that bad. So I'm just letting the paint disperse. What happens with this paper? It's kind of pulp paper. It's not really cotton, I believe. And so what happens is, I will make sure and check that later on. But what happens is that the paint and the water tends to pull on the top of the paper, so they don't really get absorbed immediately, and this leads to very quick dispersion in water. So you can see how the paint really travels. That's due to that, actually. So yeah. So results may vary at home. So let's now get some very thick paint, put it here. So this is probably as thick as you can expect. Now I'm gonna dry brush this thing a little bit, and with this paper, I don't know how much of it is gonna, yeah, you see, you really need to work hard to get some. I'm gonna dry it up a lot more, actually. So in any case, that was me going crazy and painting on myself. So this is what it will look like. I'm gonna get some more paint here, and really now we can see this, okay? So this is it in terms of dry brush. Now what I think is really fascinating is to see the mixes, okay? And the reason why is that the mixes are the most important thing with this paint, and is the reason why I use it so much. So I'm gonna show you one of the best mixes that you can get with this one. So if I'm gonna just grab a little bit of that, and now I will add some phthalo blue. This is in fact Winsor blue because it's Winsor Newton's paint, but you get the idea. So I'll just let them mix a bit on the palette here. And I let these two mix freely. I don't care to contaminate the different wells. I really couldn't care less, but you can see a very beautiful result that also allows you to achieve very dark values. So that's something that I really like. Let me zoom in a bit so you can better see. So hopefully now you can better see what this result looks like. I don't want to touch that anymore because it looks perfect. Next up, I'm going to show you what it looks like with yellow, but first I'm going to decontaminate the yellow because I know a lot of people don't like when their yellows are contaminated. So here we have some pure Hansa Yellow Medium, also Daniel Smith. I'm going to add just a bit of the quinacridone into that. Let these two mix. And you can see there's this beautiful result. I'm going to use a cleaner space on my palette to avoid more contamination. And you can see you get this gold, beautiful orangey mix with those. Now what we can do also is create a green and then mix it with that. So let's see what kind of grays we get with that same triad. So a bit of yellow, and it's contaminated a bit by the Quinacridone Rose. That's fine actually, because we're gonna do it now. We're gonna put in some blue in there, some of the phthalo blue, and then I'm gonna grab some of the quinacridone and put that in as well. And you can see how you start to get some grays, some muted colors, which I love. I always mix my grays from my primary colors. I never use black just because I'm already using my primary color, so why not use them? And I just find that the result is much more harmonious, and it's much easier to get the harmony you wanted because you use the same three paints all throughout the painting. Some may think it's boring. I love it because there's a huge variety that can be achieved just by mixing three paints like that. Okay, so this is it. Let us go over all of the results we've got here and wrap this up. So this was a relatively quick demo, and let me go over all of the results. It's just so straightforward for me because I love this paint, and I've been using it so much that I'm really well familiarized with it and what I love to do with it. So we've got here the gradation from dark to light. Usually I go light to dark, but now I decided to go the other way around, so I charged a lot of paint on this side and then moved along to the right. We've got this wet in wet dispersion here, lots of back runs and blooms, and it's just beautiful. I love that. Then some dry brush, and finally the mixes with phthalo blue and with Hansa yellow medium, which is a really neutral yellow. So a very neutral yellow, a bit of a cooler blue, and this is a cool red, as I mentioned, and these two work really well to create purples together. They work well to create oranges together, and this is it. Yeah, the greens are also pretty vibrant in that particular mixture. Look at this beautiful orange-green transition. This is not really orange, it's more of a gamboge kind of orangey yellow. This was created because I already used a mixture that was a bit contaminated here by the red, not just yellow, and I love that result. I think it's beautiful. And finally, lastly, we have the grays that we can create from this here and here as well, which I find are beautiful. This is just a beautiful trio to use. I highly recommend you check it out. It's so good for anything, like you can always dull down that very bright green. If it's too bright for you, you can use that. And you can dull it down to a bit of a more, I don't know, sap green, I guess, or olivey green, and not have it as unnatural as that. So in any case, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Let's wrap it up. So this is it. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and this review of Quinacridone Rose. One of, again, my favorite paints, one I use a lot. And I think if you're just looking for a good, well-balanced, cool red, then this one is a really good choice, not only in the Daniel Smith brand, other brands as well. If you can get that same PV19 and it has similar properties, and maybe it's not completely opaque and medium staining so that you can lift a bit. So I think this is a really, really good choice. I want to thank you so much for watching this episode, and don't forget to subscribe if you still haven't. I have tons of other of these episodes, like 42 I think, this is 43 I believe, I'm not sure, but I have more than 40 episodes before this one, and a whole lot of tutorials and videos inside, outside of me doing tons of things. I also like to talk about the business side of art and share my insights up until this point from my own experience. So make sure you do that. I will also link down below to my beginner's drawing course, which is, I think, the best way to get started with drawing in case maybe you're even into watercolor painting, but your drawings need some work on, because it's a very common issue that I see among a lot of people, that their drawing themselves need improvement. So definitely check that out as well. And also my podcast, my Patreon page, you'll find everything in the description box below. Let me know what you thought of this one. I'm answering almost all of the comments. And this is it. I will talk to you again, and I will see you again in another vid real soon.